first part of the lecture, which I'm going to skip entirely, was the demonstration of the very grave dangers of very substantial sea level rise. James Hansen predicts 15 feet by 2107. And the possibility of sea level rise after that is very substantial. If we melt all the natural ice on Earth, which is what where we're headed now, sea level rise is 260 feet, or about 80 meters. So this building where we are now would be way underwater. I'm going to skip all of that part. The second part of it is mainly just a reiteration of the point already made by Stuart, that one of the main drivers of this problem is the current economic system and the growth mania of this system. And then I move into a section where I try to show that the concept that these very undesirable phenomena are consequences of the way we have thought in Western culture for a very long time. And I'm emboldened by Albert Schweitzer's philosophy of civilization, where he says that the Western tradition gets off on the wrong foot thousands of years ago by asking too narrow a question. It asks what's good for humanity or what's good for man, but doesn't ask what's good for life. And the origins of that are both in the Judeo-Christian tradition and in the Aristotelian tradition, both of which provide much of the material for our moral systems in the West, and both of which stress the separation between humanity and the rest of nature. There's a fundamental dualism built into the way we think in the West that was also identified by Stuart. But one of the other problematical features of our moral systems is that they're pre-scientific. They are relatively unchanged by the scientific discoveries of the last several hundred years. There's been a kind of isolation between science, or separation between science and religion. And so we haven't corrected our moral systems, except in a very ad hoc way, for what we've learned about the way the universe works and about our relationship to the universe and about sort of how we work as individuals. The second problem besides the dualism problem, second problem in Western culture is a related one, that moral obligation extends only to other humans, right? That when the issue of distributive justice arises, so the things I want to talk about are how we got on this train track to tragedy, how economics is just one element in a long historical trend that's very unfortunate, the need to start over with a new ethic and a new worldview grounded in contemporary science, and lastly, a need to re-envision ourselves. And then I anticipate that this could be a moment of re-envisioning what it means to be human. Could be a gift, in terms of rethinking our role with each other, rethinking our role on the earth, and rethinking our role in the universe. And I took this particular phrasing, a moment of grace, from Thomas Berry's very excellent book, The Great Work. So I've already talked about the pre-scientific nature of our moral systems and the dualism that's built into Western thought. I've already mentioned that we tend to think of our obligations as among persons only, and not as obligations to other plants and animals, not as obligations to the universe, not as obligations, right, to as Stuart said, as to everything that is. Things got worse. They were already on the wrong path. It got worse in the Enlightenment period, and with the rise of modern science, with the principal objective of science being not understanding, which is what Aristotle would have said it should be for, but for power. And that led us, I think, further away from where we should be going. And then lastly, we suffer in our era of a very severe desymbolization, where we've basically lost our symbol systems by which we lived have lost their meaning, and so we're sort of principally adrift. So I'm going to just sort of skip over that now and get to the part where I think I'm going to talk about reconstruction. here's the desymbolization. I'll just go to this. So that's the part about economics. So, okay, so here's sort of trying to just now get, because of the late time, to start about what we need to do to reconstruct things. And my basic argument is going to be that we have to, that revising the economy is very important. We have to move to that extremely rapidly, but this is going to be part of a re-envisioning of ourselves, a rethinking of ourselves, and a different understanding of ourselves that we will really have to undertake in order to get ourselves out of this mess. And so that dimension of it, which I'm going to give it in more detail, is the harvesting of the fruits of 19th and 20th century science for reconstruction of our place in the world. Secondly, the need to connect with, listen to, and benefit from the teachings of traditional peoples, and to bring to the fore the stewardship narratives that are in the Judeo-Christian tradition and other religious traditions. Third, we need to rejoin science, ethics, economics, and politics. One of the major failures of the 20th century was to keep these ways of thinking about things and doing things separated from each other. And then lastly, we need to redefine ourselves. So internalizing some of the teachings of science. Now, of course, the last several hundred years have been enormously important in the development of our understanding of the universe and our place in it. And so I'm only going to talk about just a very tiny little bit of that. But one of the things that I think is emerging very clearly in the last few decades is the universality of the phenomena of evolution. Right? That biological evolution is simply a special case of a special limited case of a property of the universe, which is that the universe itself is a long evolutionary process. And this has been going on since at least the Big Bang. There are a number of books which, the best one that's easiest to read and very, very well written book, Into the Cool, which traced the origin of the evolution of the universe to the second law of thermodynamics. And to the notion that the universe is basically in the process of trying to reach a thermal equilibrium. It's trying to cool itself off. And that in the process of this attempt to reach a temperature equilibrium is what makes complexity emerge. And it's a long, complicated story obviously, but the basic idea is that the universe is like a Morrison gradient. Right? That if there's a gradient, the universe will try to get rid of it. So if I drop this watch, it's removing the gradient from the height of the watch when I had it in my hand to when it gets to the table. And if you think about the Earth from that perspective, think about the ocean currents and the atmosphere, for instance, they are gradient reduction attempts, right? Where the ocean currents are an attempt to bring all the water in the oceans to the same temperature. And the atmosphere, the winds, is an attempt to bring all the air surrounding the Earth to the same temperature. So it never succeeds, obviously, but the aim is to try to reduce the temperature difference between the poles and the equator. And what's been demonstrated, James Kay, the Canadian who died, unfortunately, very prematurely, and Eric Schneider and many other people have done, is to try to show that the phenomenon of life on Earth is basically also a gradient reduction mechanism, right? That there's an attempt on the part of sort of the universe, if you like, through the construction of complex biological evolution, right, to find a path, right, toward the reduction of the thermal gradient of the universe. So there's a long trend on Earth lasting over 3 billion years of the emergence of complex phenomena such as us,